Good evening, everybody. So glad you're here. I'm Mike Weilbacher, the director of the Schuylkill Center for Environmental Education. Welcome to a celebration of spring. This is the beginning of a 6-week series of Thursday Night Live. So the next 6 Thursdays at 7 o'clock, we'll be talking about nature, the environment with a variety of experts across the region. I'm so happy to be here tonight because tonight we're celebrating spring with our staff. I'll introduce them in just 1 second. If you're new to the Schuylkill Center, I want to tell you about that. Before I do that, though, just reminded that tonight's event is being recorded. All these Thursday Night Lives are recorded and they are on the Schuylkill Center's YouTube channel. So you actually go into YouTube, search for Schuylkill Center, and you can catch up with some of the wonderful Thursday Night Lives that you may have missed. Please do keep your microphone on mute. I think you're all Zoom experts 2 years in to all this, so please do that. And turn your video off if you don't want to be visible in the recording. We are going to be screen sharing, so we suggest use the side-by-side viewing option. And if you read the screen, it has directions on how to do that, so you can see the screen well as you enjoy the show. And we have 5 presenters tonight who's each going to be talking only for a few minutes, and at the end, we'll have conversation with all 5 of us. So put your questions in chat at any point during the next hour. And I'll be asking those questions then of the other 4 staff members about spring and the creatures that they're talking about. So put your pictures in chat, your questions in chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the conversation. Hope you do. So I hope you know the Schuylkill Center. We're up in Upper Roxborough, off of Ridge Avenue, below Ridge Avenue, 340 acres of forest, 4 miles of trails. We're free. Come for a walk, especially this time of year. Something new happening in the forest every week now. New flowers in bloom, new trees in bloom, new birds to see. So come for a visit. It's a great place to essentially be calmed, be healed. Nature is healing. Nature is calming and soothing. So in these crazy times, do come and find spring on our trails. Hope you'll do that. We are an environmental education center that's been doing programming, pioneering programming for more than 50 years now, since our founding in the 1960s. So much of the staff here do programs. We offer several hundred programs across the year of all kinds for all ages. Summer camp is one of our signatures. Festivals like Halloween hikes. Nature Palooza is coming up. Nature Palooza is run by Amanda Cohen. You'll see in her title, she's our manager of public programs. She's also sort of our Zoom co-captain tonight. She's going to be letting people in. So thank you, Amanda, for your help with that. We also run Nature Preschool, the state's first nature-based preschool. The kids are outside. 2 4 5-year-olds are outside all day, most days. It's really an exceptional program that we're so proud of. We have the most ambitious environmental art program of any nature center in the country. One of the shows we did a year or 2 ago was asking sculptors to do outdoor installations about ash trees being decimated by the emerald ash borer. So here's sort of a pixelated ash tree done by an artist that's still available to see as you drive into our driveway at that fork. And over the last year, we had Al Mudif, the first Mudif, this Iraqi guest house made of reeds. The first one built outside of Iraq in like 5,000 years of building Mudifs. It's an extraordinary thing. Some of you may have seen the Mudif. We winterized it. We took the roof down. It's not going to be able to be put back up again, unfortunately. So look for, here's another photo of it. Look for events in the spring where we'll essentially have a thoughtful way to commemorate the Mudif's time with us and take it down. And we're bringing together Iraqi immigrants to the United States who live in the Philadelphia region with veterans of the Iraq and Afghan wars. So we're going to have this really extraordinary way of taking down the Mudif on Memorial Day weekend. So we're marking Memorial Day weekend this way. So do watch for that. We also operate the only wildlife clinic in the city of Philadelphia, one of the small handful of them in the entire region. And this is a picture of a baby squirrel. Ironically enough, the first baby squirrels were brought to the wildlife clinic for spring today. So that's one of their ways of marking spring season, is the first baby squirrels that come in. So that happened amazingly today. This is a Cooper's hawk that they actually were able to heal and release. It's actually a bird hunting hawk. So this thing was able to, it's a great, great animal, and it was successfully rehabilitated. We do have volunteer opportunities. Do check our calendar. April's coming up, Earth Day. This is a couple of Earth Days ago. The Fanatic helped us plant a tree in honor of Earth Day. We're also a membership organization. If you're a member, thank you so much. We appreciate your membership. Memberships receive a lot of benefits, including discounts in our gift shop and on our programs, and advance notice of exclusive programs. People do join online, so feel free to do that. If you're a member, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. As I mentioned before, we've got a 6-week series. I'll tell you about next week's at the end. But among the series is an author, Sarah Dykman, who bicycled 10,000 miles while she followed the monarch butterfly's migration from her home all the way to Mexico and back. So bicycling with butterflies is among the 6 events in this series starting tonight. So we do hope you come back on Thursday nights. Many of you are regulars on Thursday night, and we really appreciate that. And I'm so happy that you appreciate this program. So thank you for that. But we're here today for a celebration of spring. We've got 5 wonderful staff members from the Schuylkill Center who have different areas of expertise. I've introduced each of them to you in turn. I'm so looking forward to hearing what they have to say about what they're looking forward to spring. This is the very first Thursday of spring. Happy spring. I think a lot of us are grateful to be in the new season and have winter behind us. But on Sunday at 11:32 a.m., a vertical shaft of sunlight stood on top of the equator. Spring began, and so here we are. So we're tiptoeing into spring and celebrating it today. And the first of our 5 staff members with us tonight is Steve Goin, who's our Director of Land and Facilities. He's also our tree maven. He's an arborist with lots of expertise in that area before he came to us. And we're so grateful to have him on our staff directing the Land and Facilities Department. And Steve is going to give us some of his favorite things to look forward to in spring with trees. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to talk about trees. Having worked with them for 20 years, it's easy to say I have more than one favorite tree, and always enjoy spreading the love of trees. The first tree that I'd like to talk about tonight is actually in our logo. The red maple leaf is illustrated in this slide down in our logo in the bottom left corner with the city line kind of cut out of it. That red maple leaf, most people think of fall when the tree turns brilliant red. But that moniker is actually expressed by this tree in many other ways. The red buds and twigs kind of go through a period of expansion, and those swelling red buds, you can even see them in the forest when you have a lot of those red maples on a hillside, shining bright. They swell, and out from these buds emerge the red flowers. They are a very early flower to emerge. This tree is wind pollinated, so they're not dependent on insect activity, and they emerge and take advantage of low amounts of foliage in the canopy, and that pollen gets spread and really can brighten up an entire hillside. So we enjoy them at the Schuylkill Center, not only in our logo, but giving us that bright early burst of spring color. Opposed to the red maple, the spice bush is actually pollinated by insects. So it emerges a little later than the red maple with this brilliant yellow-green flower that where you see it in the forest, you actually see clouds of this color kind of just illuminating the lower under canopy area of the forest. It's really fantastic. Those flowers, of course, turn into berries later on. The tree or the spice bush is just loved by so many pollinators, including my favorite butterfly, the spice bush swallowtail. The caterpillar is super cool. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's dependent on spice bush and sassafras in our area, and without those, it wouldn't be here. But the spice bush in the spring, I just love it. A great deer-resistant species that grows in a lot of different sites and conditions. And if you take notice of it in the springtime, you're sure to get a pleasing effect. The next tree is a tree that I actually is probably one of my all-time favorite small trees, the pagoda dogwood. The really interesting thing about a pagoda dogwood is its structure. At least for me, I see this very angular branching pattern that comes out and reaches out with these cup-shaped twigs. In the early spring, those little mouse ear looking leaves develop. If you get a late snow like we might be getting this weekend, we'll see. Those little mouse ears peek up out of that snow. It's really a brilliant effect. It's followed later by a rather unassuming flower, kind of white and sparse, but very, very helpful to all manners of native pollinators. So look for that really unique cupping shape in the twigs, and you might just be delighted by that pagoda dogwood. Another plant we actually just planted next to our front door in a garden for a 20th year celebration for one of our staff members, B. Kelly. One of her favorite plants and quickly turning into mine is the pussy willow. It's called a pussy willow because those little fuzzy buds kind of look like a kitty cat's paws, and they're fuzzy and they swell and reach out in the springtime. And it's not the only cat reference on this slide, because what emerges out of those little cat feet shaped buds is catkins. Catkins are drooping flower clusters, and there's a lot of other tree species that produce a catkin. Birch produce them, oak produce them, hazel, alder, beech, most of which are always wind pollinated plants. But in the case of the pussy willow, it is actually insect pollinated. So it's providing a service to those pollinators again, and such a beautiful look to that plant. You can't miss those catkins hanging off of the branches. You may recognize those twigs and those stems, the fuzzy buds, from decorations that are put into the house. If you ever get a chance to do a little pruning on a pussy willow and harvest some of those branches and bring them home, you don't have to dry them out. You can actually put them in water like a cut flower and enjoy that bud emerging and those catkins coming out, just like you would a cut flower. And so one of the last trees I wanted to talk about today, it's a spring showstopper for me. It's the eastern redbud. It has the magenta colored flowers that are just so brilliant in the springtime. You can see in the slide to the right, we have several of them planted over top of our rain yard sculpture in the courtyard of the visitor center. One of the really unique things about the way this plant flowers, it almost, the flowers and the flower buds emerge off of the twigs and really can sometimes just coat that branch so that you have this beautiful sculptural architecture and structure of the tree highlighted in this brilliant color, and really something to enjoy and behold. You know, I think that all the different pollinators and services that an eastern redbud provides, along with that beautiful appearance, you know, strikes me way more intimately than like a weeping cherry or a non-native cherry. You know, if you're looking for a smallish tree for your yard, please do consider the eastern redbud.
Thank you, Steve. That's wonderful. I really appreciate it. All that's just great information. Thank you. And if you have tree questions or tree comments, put them in chat, and we'll check in with Steve at the end of the time together. Thank you, Steve.
Absolutely.
So our next presenter is Leigh Ashbrook, who wears a couple of hats at the Schuylkill Center. One is she's one of the treasured teachers in our nature preschool. So she's the lead teacher in one of our classes, and we're so grateful for that. But she's also one of the best bird watchers on the Schuylkill Center staff, and all of us turn to her for bird ID questions. She also has one of the longest associations with the Schuylkill Center of anybody on staff. I believe, Leigh, that you may have taken your first workshop with the Schuylkill Center sometime in the 1970s. Does that sound right? Leigh, you there? Oh, unmute.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Back in 1975, I was an environmental educator intern.
That's great.
And that was really just a wonderful experience.
So you've been on the staff in several capacities, but you
Yes.
are now with Nature Preschool, and we're so grateful. And you're going to share birds. We're so excited about this.
Well, I am too, thanks, because I'm one of the resident, we happily call ourselves bird nerds at the Schuylkill Center. And I have been birding for a long time. I learn more each year. Absolutely learn more each year, which is very exciting. And let's see, I don't see a bird.
It looks like I got us out of order.
Oh, okay. Sam, I step back.
I got us completely out of order.
See you all later.
I am so sorry, Leigh. We'll come back to you. Sam, I'm so sorry. So we're actually going to shift topics. I so apologize for that. That's on me. I set up the order and then obviously forgot. So thank you for your patience with me. Sam Bucciarelli is our land stewardship coordinator. She's been in our education department, and we are proud to say that she is our staff mycologist. Not many nature centers have a staff mycologist, somebody whose specialist is on fungi. So Sam, I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm looking forward to mushrooms. Go.
Hi, everyone. So I came to the Schuylkill Center after running programs for a really long time with the Philadelphia Mycology Club on a volunteer basis. So we teach people about mushrooms all over the city of Philadelphia. And I've been doing that for about 4 years. So I'm happy to be able to do some talking about mushrooms for the Schuylkill Center. What we have on the screen right now is called a dryad saddle, and it's one of the most common mushrooms of spring. This is a decomposer, so you'll find it fruiting on decaying logs or sometimes even on upright trees. It favors maple and ash and box elder, so that's often where you'll find it growing. It has sort of a cucumber melon scent to it. usually people don't think about mushrooms as having pleasant fragrances, but this is one that does. And if you were trying to describe this mushroom to somebody, you might call it a polypore or a shelf mushroom because it is usually growing horizontally on a tree, whether that tree is fallen or standing straight up. So that's one way that you could describe this mushroom. Oh, the next one we have is witch's butter. This is a mushroom that you can find all winter long, but it sticks around into the early spring. It looks like this mushroom is decomposing this small stick, but that is actually not the case. This mushroom is actually eating another fungus that's growing inside of this stick. It's actually eating what some of you might know of as false turkey tail, a mushroom in the genus Sterium. That's witch's butter's favorite food. Witch's butter, as well as many of the other species that are related to it, are edible, but they have sort of like a gummy bear texture to them. So I don't know that I would venture to eat that, but I won't shame anyone who does. Oh, next we have what you might call round heads, Stropharia. These are, this picture was growing right next to the building at the Schuylkill Center in the wood chips. These are pretty cool. Sometimes these are also called garden giants or wine caps. So you can eat these mushrooms as well. Some people even like to inoculate the wood chips in their garden to grow them side by side with their vegetables. The next slide will have a picture of the same species. And we can see one of its characteristics here that would help you identify this in the wild. It has this very distinct partial veil underneath the cap, which you might describe as rugose or cog-shaped, that protects the gills, and that will help you identify a Stropharia species in the wild. Next we have hairy panis. This is a very cute little purple mushroom that also grows on decomposing logs in the early spring. It, like its name says, it's a little bit furry on the top and around the edges. It has white gills, and it has that very distinct purple color. It's something I'm always very excited to see in the springtime because it's very, very cute. Oh, next we have tree brain fungus, which is a really great common name for this fungus because it does look like tiny little brains growing on a small stick. I don't have too much to say about this species, but it is something that comes out in the early spring, and I'm always very happy to see it because it it is so silly looking. It truly does look like a tree brain. Next, we have chicken of the woods. This is a crowd favorite. Probably some of you know that this one is edible. It's actually a choice edible. And some people say that it tastes like chicken, hence the common name, chicken of the woods. This is also a decomposer found growing on fallen trees, sometimes standing dead trees as well. This is growing out of a bench down at Springhouse Pond. Sometimes it fruits in the spring, sometimes it fruits in the fall. And it's kind of known to fruit when it's very dry out, which is not the case for a lot of mushrooms. Mushrooms love moisture, except for chicken of the woods. Chicken of the woods likes to come out when it's very, very dry. This one looks like a picture of two beetles, but I promise you there is a fungus here. If you see, this arrow is pointing to a tiny little green pointed fruiting body coming out of the beetle's neck. So this is basically, it's a beetle STI. The beetles get it from each other while they are mating, and it spreads during the mating process, and then it will fruit out of the beetle and kill the beetle. So if you ever see in the early spring, there's a group of mycologists standing in a meadow, this is probably what we're looking at. Oh, this one's everybody's favorite. This is the blonde morel. In the springtime, people go absolutely wild for morels. You can find them at the grocery store for up to $50 a pound. They're super highly coveted in the culinary world. These are a mycorrhizal species, so they associate closely with fruit and nut trees like apples, cherries, hickories, and walnuts. What they're doing with the trees is they are capturing water and nutrients from the soil and sending those to the plant. Usually it's a tree, not always. So they're sending phosphorus, nitrogen, and water to the plant in exchange for sugars that the plant creates during photosynthesis. So this is a symbiotic relationship that happens between the mushroom and the tree. Sometimes after the tree dies, the mycorrhizal species will be the first species to begin the process of decomposition. So they switch their role from being a partner fungi to being a decomposer fungi. Next, we have the half-free morel. Some people might call these false morels, but these are in the same genus as the blonde morels. They're just a little bit less common. This one I found growing with the catalpa trees near the connector trail. It is also mycorrhizal, so it's helping those catalpa trees to get the nutrients that they need, and the catalpa trees are giving sugars to this mushroom. Oh, this one is my favorite. This is cedar apple rust. This one is my favorite because it is so ecologically interesting. So this fungus spends part of its life cycle on a juniper tree and part of its life cycle on an apple tree. During each stage, it'll produce a fruiting body. In this case, it's on a juniper, and the spores that are produced in this fruiting body will only be able to infect an apple tree. It will not be able to infect other juniper trees. So you see this a lot where junipers and apples are growing within a 2-mile radius of each other. Over 2 miles, it becomes a little hard for the spores to spread. So oftentimes, apple orchards will actually pay to have juniper trees cut down within a 2-mile radius to protect their apples from this fungus. This fungus, however, doesn't actually harm the juniper or the apple tree. It does just give it this like cosmetic grossness to it. This ball is very gelatinous. And as the spring continues, the ball will start to melt down the tree. It isn't a great look, but it is nonetheless very interesting. And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. Next up is Eduardo Duenas. Eduardo Ed is our manager of school programs in the education department. And so he and his team of educators teach all the school kids that come to the Nature Center. And I'm so thrilled that we now have some kids begin to come back. Finally, after 2 years, we have some kids beginning to return to the Nature Center for field trips, which is really wonderful. Eduardo, welcome.
Thank you, Mike. Very happy to be here.
And you're going to be sharing reptiles and amphibians with us.
Yes, what I think is important is I have 4 pictures, just a brief intervention, but there are pictures that I took on March 11th. So really not too long ago. And the water was very cold, and there was even snow in those days. So that's why I choose these ones. But by the way, the one that I captured is the big one, like in this, if you notice, it's a salamander. This is what we call it a northern two-line salamander in a larva stage. And this in the corner under is the adult stage. This one I found it in Make's Run in the stream in a very, very cold day. Salamanders are very well known for adapting to hard weather, like the cold, surviving in the cold. Different kind of salamanders, they have different behaviors. But this one is very peculiar because I like that as adult, it loses the gills, but also do not develop lungs. So it breathes outside of the water, terrestrial, but through completely through the skin. And other salamanders in the transitional metamorphosis will develop lungs to survive outside, obviously. They can be found in
Oops, Eduardo, you froze. Oh, no.
found it in
There
Make's
you are.
stream.
Eduardo, you froze for a moment there, so we didn't hear what you had just said. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I say that I found this one in the stream and
Yep.
Make's Run. That's and because they mate in the stream, that's their habitat for mating. They can be found in Canada, United States. Natural habitats, they have temperate forest, temperate shrublands, and rivers, freshwater marshes. That's typically where we find this common amphibian. They lay eggs in between March and April to start the cycle again, and it will be something about 35 to 60 eggs each time. Next one, this is same day in Fire Pond, the pond just in front of the this visitor center. All of them are eastern paint turtles. One of my favorites. This is the first day that they emerged from a long winter. The distribution is from southern Canada to northern Mexico. So they are the most widespread native turtle of the country. And we're happy that we have a very healthy population of them, especially in this fire pond. I think it's related to the deepness of the pond that they encourage, is encouraging to stay there and always come back. What they eat is mostly aquatic vegetation, like algae. They like to eat small macroinvertebrates. They can also eat other stuff like crustaceans or even fish. Adults in the wild, they can live up to 55 years. It's in a very rough amount of years that they're pretty well adapted. This one is one of my favorites. This one also, I found it in the preserve site of Schuylkill Center in Make's Spring. This is a northern red salamander's larva stage, and the larva stage is huge and really, really big. They have very pronounced gills. Something interesting about the northern, we have it also in good healthy population on Springhouse Pond, in adult form especially, like they will be totally red. And this one, the terrestrial phase of this animal. Usually for salamanders to metamorphosize, it takes like somewhere between 2 to 3 years. It might vary depending on the species, but in general, if we can speak generally, it would be 2 to 3 years. They can lay a lot of eggs at once. They could do from something 20, 30 to 130. So that's a nice adaptation this animal will have to survive. They can be poisonous, yes, like most of amphibians are, but to really affect us, we actually have to eat it. So we're not doing that. So you can, I don't encourage to touch, but if you know what you're doing, if your hands are clean out of any chemical products, you can touch a salamander. It's not like you're not gonna kill it just because you touch it. Something about northern red salamander is they live in small rocky streams. They can even live in ponds. So like I found them at like in Springhouse Pond at different stages. It's a good place to visit if you're looking for this one. Next one, please. This one from the same day. This is, I caught this one in Fire Pond. This is a pickerel frog. A lot of people, well, including myself, sometimes it's confusing to differentiate a leopard frog from a pickerel frog. The best advice for you is that the leopard frogs, the shapes, it will be more, the dots that are shaped more circular. If you can see in this picture, they're not circular, they're more like band, and especially on the legs. Then that will be kind of the first thing that I try to notice if I want to differentiate a pickerel frog from a leopard frog. Also, the female, it will be darker and obviously bigger than the male ones. Something interesting that is like we have it in the forest, in the water. It's a very common amphibian to find in the Schuylkill Center. And their ecological value is important for us too. Like other amphibians, I said, the skin releases a secretion that it will be toxic for some other animals, potential predators, that will discourage them to eating it, probably something extremely bitter for their senses. It is called pickerel frog because fishermen used to catch the frog to catch a pickerel, the fish, and this is a fish in the same family of the pike family. And if you have specific questions, I will be happy to chat a little bit more about it. There is one more picture, and this is our American toad. We have a very healthy population of American toads. I know that because we have the Toad Eater program, thanks to Claire Morgan and many other staff that they've been doing it for a while. And we learned so many of toad migration and the ecological importance for the center, and also the best way to engage our community in the stuff that are important for us as a environmental center. You can participate, you don't need a previous experience. We will put you in a level that you understand the impactful actions that are you're gonna create for us and for the neighborhood, actually, in general. I heard that we already have like 500 of them already crossed in this unstable weather, because they're picky, of course, they want perfect weather to cross. I met the Schuylkill Center through this program. I like take observations, and the first thing that I noticed is they're very smart. They don't initiate any migration if any bird is emitting calls. They wait until the last bird is not moving or sound or producing sounds, and they start the migration out when the night arrive. And if you have specific questions or how to get involved in this program, please let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eduardo. That was wonderful. Yeah. And the toads wake up in the Schuylkill Center's property in our forest and then try to cross Port Royal Avenue to get into the reservoir, which is up high and then down. And one of the treats you should do in the spring is go for a walk around the reservoir and listen to the toads trilling. It's quite a remarkable sound. Eduardo, I can bet you've done that. You've checked out their singing in the
Very
in the
peculiar
reservoir.
opinion, yes.
Yeah, so Toad Detour is, we close Port Royal Avenue and Eva Street and help the toads cross. And they've got a Facebook page. The toads get more press than the Google Center does. They've been on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, so among many other things. And Ed did a shout out to Claire Morgan, who's among the viewers, and she's a former staff member, our volunteer coordinator, who was the first person to take on Toad Detour on our staff. So welcome, Claire. Okay. Now, Leigh, it's really your turn. My apologies for the early start before, but welcome back, Leigh.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here again, or still, I should say. All of the birds that I'm going to talk about this evening are what we call neotropical migrants. And what that means is they live in the New World, the Western Hemisphere, and they migrate back and forth between the Northern and Southern hemispheres. People thought for the longest time that birds migrated because it got cold up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Well, that's not true. Birds migrate for their food. So if you're a bird who comes to nest up in North America and you're eating insects for the most part, once your food source starts to dwindle, you're going to want to migrate south to where the insects are going to be. So our year-round residents, cardinals, blue jays, robins, these are able to find all the nourishment that they need up here. So neotropical migrants, here's our first one. I love this bird. This is the ruby-throated hummingbird. And that one's ruby throat is a little unusual looking. Anyway, the one on the left is the male, and he is the one that has the bright iridescent feathers under his chin or his throat. And the female is there on the right. She lacks that ruby red throat, but she has a couple of white spots on the outer edges of her tail feathers. They're kind of like tail lights, you might think of. Check out that long tongue. That's what they use for sipping nectar out of tubular flowers. And as they're getting nectar and they're going from plant to plant, they make fantastic pollinators. So if you want to attract hummingbirds to your yard, plant flowers like Monarda, native honeysuckles. They will love that kind of thing. While they're getting those, the nectar out of flowers, they're also going to snap up some little bugs, some gnats, very tiny flies. I have actually seen hummingbirds hawk small flies right out of the air, which is pretty cool. They will be arriving in about 5 to 6 weeks, we hope. The male always comes first, and a short time after that, the female will show up. The female builds an amazing nest. It's only a few inches across. She spends quite a bit of time on it, fastening the base of the nest onto a branch that is sloped downward. And she puts it in a place where she can get a good view of the flower supply nearby. So she knows exactly where her nectar is going to be. The remarkable thing about this nest is that she covers the outside with lichen, fantastic camouflage. And she uses a lot of spider webs. I love this. The nest can actually stretch as the chicks are growing because of the structure of the nest and the use of spider webs. As those little chicks get bigger and bigger, so does the nest. They're still held very snugly in there, but that's pretty remarkable. I don't know of any other nests that actually grow around the chicks. And she will feed them nectar, just putting her bill right into their throats. Another remarkable thing about hummingbirds is that they can fly 75 times, or they can flap 75 times in just a second's worth of time. Can you believe that? It is amazing. They're the only bird that can fly forward, backward, sideways, and they can hover in midair because of the structure of their wing. They're not flapping up and down. They're flapping in a sort of figure eight. Let me see what else, because I get so excited about hummingbirds. Maybe I should stop here. Okay, could we see the next one? Oh, this is a fantastic bird. You can tell it's in the blackbird family by looking at that typical blackbird beak. This is a Baltimore Oriole. If you have an older bird book, you might see the name listed as Northern Oriole, but it's been changed back to Baltimore. This bird is a little smaller and sleeker than a robin. The males will arrive first, and they will set up territory, chasing other male Baltimore Orioles around. Their song is a beautiful slurred whistle, and they also do a loud chatter scold. I think the most remarkable thing about Baltimore Orioles is that the female builds the most incredible nest. You may have seen these pendant nests, which are woven little bags of grasses. I was so fortunate one day, years ago, down at Springhouse Pond to see a female oriole starting her nest. It was incredible. I don't know how they do it with just their bills, but she was weaving the foundation of the nest. It takes her about 2 weeks to complete the nest with all that external weaving, and then she goes inside and lines it with little rootlets and soft plant material. The male doesn't do a thing except watch. Although sometimes he will go perch near her and sing. He may bring an occasional bit of nesting material, but that's pretty much what he does. In the nest, when the chicks hatch, they're altricial, meaning they are born without any feathers. So their incubation period is shorter than it is for birds who would nest on the ground, such as ducks or geese. But they're out of the nest within a couple of weeks, and both of the parents will feed them. If they have a second brood, then the male will feed that first brood while the female is brooding. And yes, I just saw a question in the chat. They are sexually dimorphic, meaning that the males and the females look different. You can see that amazing flame orange, and he likes to hang out in the tops of trees. So he's often very, very visible. Whereas the female is sort of an olivey green on her back and a muted yellow on her breast and her belly. And that way she blends in really well in the tops of the trees with the dappled sunlight. So that's a cool thing about the orioles. They will be here, I think I said, in usually the second or third week of May. And they tend to leave a little bit earlier than the other neotropical migrants. By the end of August, first week of September, they're gone. Okay, scarlet tanager. This is another truly amazing looking neotropical migrant. They will go down as far as northern Brazil. Many of these birds fly to either Central or South America. The Baltimore Oriole also goes to South America. Sexually dimorphic, again. The female is much quieter in color. The male also, like the Baltimore Oriole, likes to hang out very high up in the trees. His song is, it's described by Roger Torrey Peterson, the father of field guides, as sounding like a robin with a cold. And that's actually a pretty good description. What's interesting about these birds is that the male staying higher in the treetops tends to hawk insects. That means he'll be on a perch, he'll spot an insect, he'll take off and snag that insect in the air and go back to his perch. Whereas the female will glean, that means she goes along and she picks off branches and twigs, the insects, instead of flying up and hawking them. I have seen females on the ground as well. So they get their food in different ways. Same thing coming up within a few weeks after the beginning of May. And just a spectacular bird. They're very easy to see when they're moving around. Oh, this is one of my favorite birds of all. This is wood thrush. And if you look at the shape of it, look at the shape of its bill, you can tell that it's a cousin of a robin. I think it's a little plumper in the breast than a robin. But this bird nests in understory in the forest. They will nest anywhere from 6 to 20 feet off the ground. They do rely on understory, which are the small trees below the really tall trees that make up the canopy of the forest. One of the things that I find so charming about the wood thrush and the veery, which will be the next slide, and robins do this too, is to get their food. They're ground feeders. And as they're looking for small invertebrates for themselves and to feed their chicks, they will they'll pick up the leaf litter on the bottom of the floor and they'll just throw it over their shoulders. It's really wonderful to see. I just find that so endearing. And wood thrushes are so well known for their song. Truly incredible song. It is an ethereal flute-like song, and they will sing pretty late into the evening. And they'll also sing later in the season than many other birds. You can hear wood thrushes singing in late July after many other birds are no longer singing their territorial calls. Just a fantastic bird. Okay, here is one of its cousins, the veery, also a thrush. This one is a little slimmer. This is too, sorry to say, a species of concern. 42% of veery population has declined over the last 10 years. And there are all kinds of thoughts about why that has possibly happened. One of them is that veeries tend to like forest that is a little denser than robins like, or than even wood thrushes like. Those birds are more comfortable nesting near edges. Veeries may be declining because of forest fragmentation, not only up here, but also down in the tropics. That's a problem for many neotropical migrants, not only losing habitat here in the Northern Hemisphere, but because of deforestation from lumbering and creating farmland, they're losing their space to live. Sometimes veeries actually nest right on the ground, but they usually nest a few feet above the ground. Like the wood thrushes, they will use understory. They love to eat berries, as the wood thrush does. They will rely on the berries of native shrubs and trees, and forage on the forest floor. I think I just said that, sorry. It's a beautiful bird, and this song is a haunting descending trill. So if you have the Merlin app, and I would strongly recommend that you look into getting that. It's available for iPhone and for Androids. It's by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, and it will show you not only the bird, but it will have recordings, and they're excellent recordings from their Macaulay library of the songs and calls of the different birds. So if you want to check out Veery's song, you can go right to the Merlin app, or you can go to allaboutbirds.org, which is Cornell's website. Let's see our next bird, Mike. Okay, this is the last one. Look at that romantic pose. Oh my goodness. These are wood ducks, and here's a great example again of sexual dimorphism, where the male and female look very different from each other. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that with wood thrushes and veeries, there is no sexual dimorphism, and the only way you can tell which one is which gender is to watch their behavior, because the female is the one who does far more of the nest building, and she will also be fed by the male while she is on the nest. He is a good provider, both wood thrushes and veeries. So wood ducks are really interesting in that in North America, they are the only perching duck. It's not really so evident in this picture, but if you look carefully, you'll see that they have some pretty long claws on those webbed feet. Perching duck, meaning they perch in trees. They nest in trees. I think there's only one or two other species of ducks, and they're out on the West Coast, that actually nest in trees, but they don't perch the way these do. They have come back. They're earlier migrants than the others. They have come back already. They migrate to the Bahamas and Cuba, but they haven't seen any at Schuylkill Center yet, but they're all through Fairmount Park along the Wissahickon Creek. I was so thrilled when I went to look for them the other day. There had to be 30 of them at least swimming up and down the creek. And the most exciting thing was that I heard a pair calling to each other high up in trees far away from the creek. They don't quack like other ducks, but well, I'm not going to do bird calls tonight, but some other time I'd be happy to do all the bird calls that I know. What's another interesting thing about the wood duck is that they begin their courtship and pair bonding in the fall. And their courtship is just with so many diverse bowels and billing and dipping heads in water and splashing the water up over their backs. They are just amazing to watch. So in October, early November, you can see wood ducks doing this really fascinating series of actions to attract each other and to form the pair bond. They stay together during the winter. And now that they're back, they'll do more pair bonding, and then they're ready to mate, and the male will accompany the female to her nesting spot, and then he's pretty much done. She will find a cavity in a tree, usually pretty high up. Wood ducks prefer a natural cavity, but they will also use boxes that are made by people. And if you walk along Forbidden Drive in Fairmount Park, you will see several wood duck boxes that were erected by someone who used to do our bluebird monitoring program for us, Chris McCabe. Chris is no longer living, but he and a Boy Scout troop put up almost all of those wood duck boxes that are along the Wissahickon, which is, I think, why we have such a good population of wood ducks. So mom will lay the eggs in the cavity, and the bottom of the nest is at least 2 feet deep. And she will lay anywhere from 10 to 15 eggs, possibly more, possibly less. She covers up the eggs with soft down. She'll leave the eggs just twice a day to go and feed herself. And the eggs won't actually begin to develop until she has laid the last one. So because these are precocial birds, not altricial, precocial meaning once they are out of the egg, they are set to go. When they hatch, mom will leave the nest and she'll go down on the ground and will call to them. And the babies use those sharp claws on the tips of their little webbed feet to climb up the inside of the tree or the nest box to get to the opening. Now, if you can imagine a tiny little duckling looking down 20 or 30 feet, and they don't fly. They have the tiniest little wings just covered with down. So what do? Mom calls them and they jump out. They just jump right out and they land on the ground, often bouncing, and they're not hurt somehow. Mom will keep calling until all the ducklings are out, and then she will lead them down to whichever body of water is closest, whether it's a pond or a stream. So those ducklings that are going to be hatched from that high tree that I saw in Fairmount Park are going to have quite a bit of a walk to go. Once with other birds, once they're out of that nest, they never go back. The nest is only for developing eggs and then for incubating the ducklings. They eat acorns. They'll eat invertebrates. They'll even eat salamanders, tadpoles. Mom does not feed the chicks because as precocial birds, they're ready to pretty much take care of themselves, except for needing to be protected by mom. She has amazing camouflage because in the evening, she'll lead her whole brood up to a bank or to a log floating or a branch floating underneath a canopy of leaves, and she blends right in, and the babies will snuggle underneath her. A gorgeous, gorgeous duck. Go look for them. Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you. Thank you, Leigh. That's wonderful. Really appreciate that so much. And congratulations to you on raising the next generation of birders at Nature Preschool. Thank you. I'm going to take us home. It's already after 8 o'clock. Just bear with us for 5 more minutes. We're going to share with you a taste of some of the wildflowers that are blossoming either now at the Schuylkill Center or soon. and then we'll take a few of your questions. So if you do need to sign off, we're so glad you're here and we appreciate your time, but we're going to stay on for like 10 more minutes. So I hope you can stay on for 10 more minutes. So actually, this is past the time of skunk cabbage. Many of you probably know it. When you walk down the ravine loop towards Smith Run and turn left at the stream, you'll find a great population of skunk cabbage. First flower of spring, the hood essentially can melt snow. It generates heat. The flowers inside that, and it stinks a little skunky, hence the name. And carrion flies and beetles crawl in looking for the dead meat. They don't find any, and they pollinate the flower. So actually, that funky purple color is a giveaway that it's looking for a dead carrion, dead meat. It's trying to attract carrion, beetles, and flies. So many flowers do that. So skunk cabbage, the first flower of spring. Coming soon thereafter, and maybe soon, is bloodroot. There's the species name, the Latin name sanguinaria. So you know the word sanguine, when someone is sanguine, they're calm and mellow, but the word relates to blood. So actually, you had good blood if you were a sanguine person. So bloodroot has a root. Guess what color? The sap is red. Lots of medicinal properties. However, it's poisonous, but it's one of the earlier bloomers. And this is taken at the front door of the Schuylkill Center, not far from Bee's Pussy Willows. So we hope that we always look forward to it. Hope that it comes back, and it should be in bloom soon. I'm looking forward to that one. And bloodroot is one of many flowers who practice one of my favorite words, myrmecochory. That's a word you can neither pronounce nor spell. But what they do is they produce seeds that have a little structure. That's the ant playing with it on top here, on top of the structure. An eliosome. Elia comes from the same root as oleo, so it's fat. So many wildflowers put fat, a little fatty thing on their seed. And so ants love that fat, take the seed underground, pull the eliosome out and throw the seed in the little trash dump underground, and guess what happens? So ants help wildflowers spread their seeds because wildflowers in turn put the eliosome on top, so they get pulled underground. And bloodroot is one of at least 3 flowers we'll meet that do that. Trillium does it too, practice myrmecochory. Actually, we have some trilliums from early trillium up. We have several different species at the Schuylkill Center. The red trillium goes by the nickname wake robin. I love that name because it came up early. I have a notion that this must be a New England, perhaps, term for it, where robins may be more migratory than they are here. Here in Philadelphia, robins are not a sign of spring. We do have robins all year long. For me, the sign of spring with robins is in the winter when the ground is hardened, they're eating like fruits. They switch their diet from earthworms and insects up to fruits, and they're eating like crab apples in trees. So they're sitting in people's trees eating those fruits. And then the sign of spring for me is the robins are on the ground then looking for earthworms again because the ground is thawed enough. But there's red trillium, AKA wake robin. Tri-lily, trillium, it is a member of the lily family. Everything comes in 3s or multiples of 3, 3 petals, 3 sepals underneath it, 3 leaves below that. So, and then the sexual parts, the male and female parts in the center also come in 6s, multiples of 3s. So trillium, the tri-lily, its species name is its common name. I love wake robin. Also has another nickname, stinking Benjamin. I'm not sure where the Benjamin part comes from, but also it's got that skunk cabbagey kind of color. So again, it's attracting carrion beetles and flies. So it's a little stinking Benjamin. It's got a cousin that goes by the name Trillium grandiflorum, the grand flowered trillium. That's white trillium. The flowers are bigger. In my experience, red trillium comes first down the ravine loop, and then white trillium soon thereafter. So again, lots of 3s. So we have red trillium and we have white trillium, but we have white trillium that has a reddish phase and red trillium that gets kind of pinkish whitish. So it's very confusing, but don't worry about it. Just come down and enjoy the trilliums. The first ones have started neither red nor white, but we have a third one called toad shade, where the flower sits on the leaves, and that one has popped up, but these are coming really soon. Then we have trout lily, who's been sort of the poster child for this series. The trout part is that leaf you can see is modeled like the back of one of Steve's favorite animals, the brook trout. So they felt it looked kind of brook trouty. So there's the trout lily, also called Turk's cap lily, dog-tooth violet. Lots of flowers have lots of different common names, but bright yellow. Also practices myrmecochory. So the ants bring the seeds underground. What I love about this is that it's a very patient flower. And actually, when you go to the Schuylkill Center, you're not going to see many flowers. What you are going to see is carpets of leaves. So for many years, it puts up one leaf, and that leaf photosynthesizes and sends sugars down and starches down into the root, gets a little bit bigger, and the next year does it again, up comes the leaf and does it again. Next year, up comes the leaf, does it again. Finally, 7, 8, 10, 11 years in, it's got enough resources, it does something crazy. It puts up 2 leaves, and then up comes the flower. So watch for that too. If you see the trout lily, see if you can find the leaves right next to it. So there's trout lily, sweet, sweet flower. And as you're walking down the ravine loop towards the trout lily and the trillium, on the way down, just before the skunk cabbages, you'll see spring beauty. Now we could call lots of flowers spring beauties. This is the one that got the common name. The flower is stunning, but it's tiny. That flower is only about a ½ inch wide. So it's a very small flower, small, white, 5-petal flower. And look at the gorgeous lilac colored racing stripes, sort of painted in the flower. Spring beauty. Look forward to that one. Oh, there's some trout lily leaves underneath it, right at the bottom of it too. So again, right nearby. Love this one. We only have like 1 or 2 of these, and they do come up early. So it's early April. You have to look for these. They look kind of like bleeding hearts, but this is a wild version of a plant in that family. And it looked to early naturalists, like, remember those cartoons of Dutchmen and those funny pants that Dutchmen always wore in like Bugs Bunny cartoons back in the day. So it looks like a bunch of those hanging out to dry. So it goes with the name of Dutchman's breeches. So we don't have a lot of this. We have a very small. It's in our wildflower loop as you're walking by Pollywog Pond. Get a map, go to Pollywog Pond, then start the wildflower loop. And about a third of the way down on the right, you should be able to find, I'm sorry, on the left, you should find some Dutchman's breeches, just a little bit. You have to be mindful. We have a lot of this in lots of places all across the Schuylkill Center. This is a really common wildflower, I'm happy to say. Jack in the pulpit, some of you probably know it. If you lift the flap of the pulpit up, Jack is the spadix, which is the sexual parts of the flower in there. This is a cousin of skunk cabbage. It is attracting insects in a different kind of way, not smelling like rotting flesh. This is really interesting. It's trying to attract fungus gnats, believe it or not. Sam, you'd like this. So the fungus gnats smell what seems to be kind of a fungusy smell. They fly in and they look all around for it and they can't find it. And so they essentially then pollinate the flowers that are on that spadix. But then it's slippery and they can't get out. So with some of the flowers, there's a little hole at the bottom, like a trap door, and they sneak out. Some of the flowers, however, don't have the trap door, and the poor fungus gnats, they fly around and around, get exhausted, and they die inside. I don't know how evolution created that as a system, but that's the way that it goes. So some of the fungus gnats get out through the trap doors, some of the fungus gnats don't. But Jack is giving sermons in our forest, in his pulpit, across much of the Schuylkill Center. I love this flower. Also love the diversity of the purple striping, purple and green striping. So some very purple, some very green with almost no purple, and lots of variation in between. Check out Jack in the pulpit. And then mayapple. Just like trout lily, mayapple will for many years send up that one umbrella-shaped leaf and another umbrella-shaped leaf another year, and then the 3rd year an umbrella one leaf, and it keeps doing that. And then when it has the resources, then it goes crazy, sends up the 2-leafed version with a flower that hangs in between. And that flower then becomes an apple, sort of a round, bright green apple-shaped thing that actually isn't in May. This might be a southern name, I'm wondering, because it's more of a June apple for us. So the flower in May becomes the apple in June, and one of the favorite foods of the box turtle. So it's great to see so much. And actually, we have a fair number of box turtles at the Schuylkill Center, so I think that they're enjoying the May apples. So there's a lot of wildflowers that are there. That's just a smattering of them. The one thing I'll leave you with is the one image is that the flowers are coming out now because there's no leaves yet on the trees, or very few. So the trees are just leafing out. So the sunlight bathes the forest floor and warms all these roots that have been hibernating essentially during the winter. And so the flowers come out, and they've got this narrow window of time to make their flowers and photosynthesize before the leaves all come out. So there's this race between tree leaves and these spring wildflowers, what called spring ephemerals. And so by June, July, August, when it's high summer, you see nothing, no parts of this flower. They're all just the living piece on the ground. So you've got some wildflowers to look forward to, and we hope you come to see them. I'm going to stop sharing. Before I do that, I'm going to get to your questions in chat when I stop the sharing. And next week, we're going to talk here at 7 o'clock about the red knot, an extraordinary bird who migrates from the tip of South America all the way up to the Arctic Circle, one of the longer migrants, and lands at the Delaware Bay just as the horseshoe crabs are washing up and laying their eggs. And we have a wonderful scientist, Larry Niles, who is the world expert. He's in New Jersey, the world expert on the red knot. And there's a huge problem with the red knot in that they are, horseshoe crabs have been harvested for lots of things. So horseshoe crab populations have been plummeting. Red knots have been in trouble. And so that's our next week's conversation. But let me stop sharing, and then I'm going to come to your questions. And we're going to stop in just 1 second. We put the link up and for Toad Detour, so make sure you go to that. And let me come down. Sam, we have a question from Steve. Does the beetle fungus only infect ladybugs or many types of beetles?
So I was actually just looking at that. It seems that the green beetle hanger fungus affects only lady beetles, but it affects them indiscriminately. So whether it is a red lady beetle with black spots, maybe it has 2 spots, maybe it has 17 spots, maybe it's a black lady beetle with red spots, or maybe it's yellow with black spots. All lady beetles can be affected, but seemingly only lady beetles.
And then while I have you, you talked about mycorrhiza. Can you just quickly explain that and the importance of that?
Sure. So mycorrhizal fungi are fungi that have a symbiotic relationship with a plant. Most often we talk about that plant being a tree, but that's not always the case. And the symbiosis works by the fungus coating the roots of the plant almost entirely in its fungal hyphae cells. You can think of it almost like a sheath of fungal cells over the roots of the plant. And it covers them very densely to prevent other fungi from competing with it. This relationship happens because the fungus is hungry and it wants those sweet sugars that the plant has that it creates during photosynthesis. The plant allows this to happen because the fungi have much smaller cells that are much better at absorbing nutrients, specifically phosphorus and nitrogen, and also water. So plants obviously require a lot of water, and they get a lot of that water from their fungal partners. Not all mycorrhizal fungi are mushroom producing fungi. In fact, most of them do not produce mushrooms, and they are things that we will never see with our naked eyes unless we become soil scientists, which, like, right on, if you want to do that, that's awesome. Yeah, so that's what that is. It's a partnership between a plant and a fungus.
That's great. Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much. And given the time, I'm going to wrap things up and hope that everybody joins us next week and the weeks thereafter. Check out the whole series. So that was Sam Bucciarelli, who's our land stewardship coordinator and also the coordinator of our native plant sale, which is starting right now. People can order plants online. Come do that. Steve Goin, our director of land and facilities, shared trees. Leigh Ashbrook in Nature Preschool shared about birds, Eduardo Duenas in our education department, our school programs manager. She had reptiles and amphibians. And I want to thank all of you, and everybody unmute yourself and please thank our staff for celebrating spring with us. Feel free to sign off and say a good night and a thank you to everybody. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you all.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Claire, if you're still here, thank you. Good night, everybody.